Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This week we break down UFC 278 taking place in Salt Lake City, Utah. Rematch almost 7 years in the making here. We got active top pound-for-pound fighter Kamaru Usman looking to make another defense of that welterweight strap here as he takes on Leon Edwards. And in the co-main event, a fight we're all looking forward to here is Paulo Costa taking on Luke Rockhold. Costa's power, Luke's chin. What could go wrong here, man, you know? Pay-per-view also featured bout, so we got 3 fights we'll go over here on the pay-per-view. We got Aldo taking on Merab, Dvalishvilli. Excited to get into these fights with you. Total of 13 for us on Saturday. Last week, we had UFC San Diego. It was a night full of a ton of finishes again, man, and included, Dominic Cruz finally getting the finishing touches put on him by Chito Vera with that nasty head kick. As far as the betting card goes, the middle of the year for me, been all over the place, man. Ended up not the night that I wanted, even though I felt like I had some good reads. Night for you, though, continuing that streak that you've been on, man. So before we get started for this pay-per-view, go ahead and recap last week for us.
Yeah, man. We'll take a look at your card first. You had 1.5 units on Marlon Vera, and you had great closing line value. You had him at minus 184, and like you said, he put the finishing touches on Cruz, and that was a solid bet. I think it was O'Day Osborne who kind of shit the bed for you that night. You had 2 units on him at minus 250, and through that wild flying knee, Tyson Nam landed that overhand right that he was trying to set up the entire fight. Another good read was the Jason Witt versus Josh Quinlan minus 190. Fight doesn't go to decision. You knew Jason Witt's chin wasn't going to hold up over 3 rounds, and it delivered. He threw the naked leg kick and it delivered. Like you said, a couple of really good reads, but it just didn't end up the greatest. It was minus 1.75 units and definitely something you can come back from. Taking a look at my card, I did hit our Tennessee boy, Nate Landwehr, plus 270. Absolutely incredible fight. Definitely a barn burner, a little bit of a nail biter. And he was, the entertainment value was through the roof. But as far as, being comfortable as a backer of him, it was a nail biter for sure. We were both on Yusuf Zalal, who, we both had 2 units on him, pretty big. It would have been a night changer for you. And it was a draw. I personally scored that for Zalal, but what are you going to do? I'll take the draw rather than getting robbed. And then I did miss on the Ontiveros TKO round 1 plus 1,000, but I would make that bet 100 times over, man. He is dangerous as could be for that first 2.5 minutes. I ended up the night plus 2.1 units and 20% ROI. Looking to keep that ball rolling. In our main event, we have the rematch between champ Kamaru Usman and the challenger Leon Edwards, this time for the welterweight strap. And one that might not be the most exciting matchup that we could drum up in this division, but it's definitely a necessary one. Leon has been patiently waiting on the sidelines in this gridlock division as it's kind of played out in these last 3 years, and he's been able to put together an impressive 10-fight unbeaten streak since suffering that loss to Usman in their first match. And it just seems like this was a long time coming. Now, there's 2 ways you can look at Edwards' record since their first matchup. He fought guys like Vicente Luque, RDA, Nate Diaz, Bilal Muhammad, and still hasn't suffered a loss. Or you could look at it like, dang, the most memorable part of his last fight with Nate Diaz was him getting rocked in the 5th. That Bilal fight, it got stopped because of an eye poke, and it was before the fight even really got to get started, as much as, Leon would try to make you think otherwise. Then you're looking at his next most recent fight, and that was 3 years ago against RDA, who we figured out as a 155er and probably should have never been up in that weight division to begin with. I prefer to give Leon the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the issues he's faced climbing these ranks, and I do see a serious threat to Usman's reign over the welterweight division here. I will admit that Usman's never been someone I personally have been too high on. It's a mixture of the way he talks, his personality, his fight style, but I've always had my doubts about him as a champion, and those doubts have cost me money over the years, and I'm willing to lose a little bit more right here. Especially on Colby. I'll give credit where it's due. Usman's impressed me when he switched to train at Elevation with Trevor Whitman a few years back, and it's been evident in his recent performances that his camp change has paid dividends in his career. All that being said, I do have suspicions about his durability and whether or not he'll have an answer if he can't use his wrestling in this fight. Leon, nearly 7 years to think about their first fight. Taylor is game to beat a wrestler like Usman and patch up those holes that Usman was able to exploit in their first match. And I think we're getting a really disrespectful line, man. You know, Leon has all the tools and experience to make this rematch even closer than their last fight, which was 1-1 going into the third. And now we get to see it play out over 5 rounds, which is going to be very interesting, especially if Leon can keep this fight on the feet. Leon Edwards' money line is the play for me. Anything over plus 300 is an absolute steal in this fight. I see Leon winning this 35% of the time, even on his worst day. And there's currently plus 330s out there on his money line, which is an 11% edge. And reason why I think we both have already laid a little bit on him on his money line.
I have, man. I've got on the Leon Edwards side as well. Definitely is not a Colby Covington fight week or nothing like that. You know, it seems like it's kind of flying under the radar. There's not another title on this pay-per-view or anything. It's in Salt Lake City, not a Las Vegas or anything, you know. But we're talking about two of the most legitimate welterweights on the planet right now, combined 30-fight win streak. And while take nothing away from Kamaru Usman, you're not going to lock two of the best of any weight class in the cage and convince me that one of them should be favored over 80% of the time. You know, I think I learned my lesson with Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling. And, you know, it's the two best in the division, and this line's just completely disrespectful. And Usman shouldn't be more than a minus 200 favorite at most here. But no doubt for him, you know, the skills are there, man. Athletic, strong, gas tank like crazy, and he fights to his strengths. You know, he's a real smart fight IQ when he's in the cage. It is improvements on the feet that you've liked to see. The finishes over Gilbert Burns, first person to knock out Jorge. I mean, even, you know, landed a couple times on Colby and was close to finishing him. I think what did finish him in the first fight. But, you know, I'm a bit concerned in this matchup because what if he has fallen in love with the striking a little bit? He is 100% not the striker of Leon Edwards. And if you watch the fight back the first time, he's clearly not getting any of the best of any of those exchanges here. With Leon, when I watch it back, man, it was having a ton of success. You know, he's in southpaw. The jab was getting through. Busted him up with a little straight left, sneaky uppercut. And if he's busy with that lead left leg, you know, with the southpaws have those advantages with, it's just going to keep Kavara's volume down, make him look to wrestle. And, you know, while that was the deciding factor the first time around, we haven't seen Kamaru have to go to that game plan since the fights with Jorge the first time, since the fights with Woodley. That move to Trevor Whitman has definitely made him more of a polished striker. And, you know, again, I don't think you should be striking with Leon here. And, you know, there's never been anything to make me question the gas tank of Kamaru Usman, but I know he trains at elevation. Salt Lake City is at a high elevation. If cardio, you know, is ever a detriment to somebody, it's usually the offensive wrestler who's having to work a whole bunch. And, man, you know, I'm just with you. It's two of the best fighters on the weight class. You can't tell me someone wins this 81% of the time, and I'm with you, man. Value all day on Leon Edwards. In our co-main event, we have Paulo Costa taking on Luke Rockhold. And I keep asking myself why in the hell Luke would choose this fight for his comeback fight. There's middleweights like Strickland, Jack Hermanson, Derek Brunson, you know, and you choose the one middleweight that really has potential to come out here and put your lights out. With Costa, you know, I will say the level of competition he's fought, it's really nowhere near, you know, what Luke has seen in the octagon. None of the guys still hold a roster spot. Best win you're probably looking at is a 42-year-old Yoel Romero. And then you throw in the last time we saw Costa, he looked like a fool of himself, showed up way overweight, fight got moved to 205 pounds. Just pretty much embarrassing go around from him. I think when I see online, though, it's a much more serious approach from him. The guy looks on weight, looks on shape, and I think the forward pressure and the volume he has is what he's going to have in this type of fight. He cannot let Luke keep his range and constantly span his kicks to the body and to the head. He's got to put him on his back foot, put him up against a cage, and let the hands go. On the side of Luke, though, you know, I used to talk Luke up all the time, dude. He was one of my absolute favorite fighters. I love the skill set. The striking was really improving. Strong on the mat, nasty jiu-jitsu, and it was at AKA when DC and Kane were at their height. Now, just a different point in his career, though. You know, he's lost 3 of his last 4, knocked out in all of them. And when you go back to watch the Blachowicz fight, he looked like complete shit, in my opinion. And, you know, his last win was 7 years ago against David Branch. And something I haven't seen a lot of people bring up is the fact that he hasn't even made the middleweight limit since 2018, February of 2018. So we're going over 4 years since this guy's cut to 185. And throwing a herniated disc, the shin covering I'm seeing still in the training videos, there's not a lot, you know, to like from Luke wanting to really back him here. One type, you reference a fighter like Rory McDonald and Robbie Lawler, where those two just went to war and they didn't come out the same guy. And I think you can say the same for Luke Rockhold and Weidman. They went to absolute war for like 4 rounds, and both of their durabilities have went completely down the drain since then, left a lot in the octagon. And Luke, never seen a decision in the last 10 years, spanning 10 fights. Costa's 92% finish rate. I think we do see a finish here, and my money's on the Costa TKO.
I think we're both kind of seeing this fight the same way as far as the most likely way it's going to play out. But I do think that there are some different ways that you could bet this fight. As you mentioned, that huge layoff for Rockhold is the most concerning. Not really sure if it's going to be good or bad as far as his chin's concerned. But there is no time for ring rust because they're throwing him back into the wolves with Paulo Costa here. Truthfully, I think Rockhold is the better fighter all around, skill for skill. I think that length and the kicking game is a nightmare matchup for somebody with the short arms and volume-heavy game of Paulo Costa. And then also, I think that if this fight were to find its way to the mat, that Rockhold would hold a significant advantage in both the wrestling and the submission grappling department. That being said, Rockhold definitely been on the receiving end of some of that life-altering punishment. And sadly, that's a factor that you have to bring in when breaking down this fight. Paulo Costa is an absolute machine at the end of the day. And outside of that one time he got clipped by Izzy, he's shown incredible durability throughout his career. And I think that it's still fair to say that he's maintained that durability after we just saw him go 5 rounds with Vettori. Although I think Paulo will struggle initially with those kicks of the much longer striker and Luke Rockhold, I do think that he'll eventually be able to get on the inside where he's able to exchange those nukes. And, as I told P earlier in this week, I do expect Rockhold's chin to get tested, and I expect it to get tested early. I do think that if we see him get chin checked and he's able to withstand that initial barrage of punches, I am confident that he's going to be able to make this a close fight for 3 rounds. Fight doesn't go the distance is minus 320 range. And, with my logic where I think if Luke gets touched and he doesn't have the chin for it anymore, that he's going to go down early, I decided to play the under 1.5 at plus 120. I think that that's much better than playing the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 300 or more. And at the end of the day, Luke Rockhold also has ways to finish this fight. They're 185ers. Luke, one of the nastiest kicking games, like you said. And if he does decide to test the wrestling of Costa, that Rockhold submission game he's shown throughout his career is super sneaky, and you can get a submission at plus 1,000. I think that that's a crazy high line, and so like I said, I'm playing the under 1.5 at plus 120 and the Luke Rockhold submission at plus 1,000.
Love them both.
Our next matchup is Jose Aldo versus Merab Dvalishvilli. This has been an odd one for me to look at all week, man. On one end, we have the legend that never dies, Jose Aldo, who seems like he'd be approaching 40 years old at this point. He has, had his name amongst the best in the game for so long. But no, he's only 35 years old. He's amassed 38 pro fights and is currently on his longest win streak since he defended his belt against Chad Mendez in 2014. His opponent, much lesser known and much more difficult to pronounce Merab Dvalishvilli, kind of silently put together an impressive 7-fight win streak since his initial losses he faced entering the UFC. Dvalishvilli's made his name off of being a nonstop workhorse that combines that hard-nosed wrestling and relentless amount of pressure that breaks down his opponents over the course of the fight. And initially, I thought that this was going to be a great matchup for Merab, as we've seen Aldo break from pressure fighters in the past like Peter Yan or Max Holloway. But it's important to note that this is only a 3-round bout. Over the course of Jose Aldo's illustrious 20-fight UFC career, he's maintained a 90% takedown defense, and he's faced everything from striker to wrestler. I'm personally not concerned with Aldo's ability to stuff takedowns of Merab for the first 2 rounds. I think he's got excellent hips, great sprawls, plenty of weapons to keep a wrestler honest in their attempts to shoot for takedowns. So my favorite play on this fight is Jose Aldo scorecards no action at minus 135 on DraftKings. Truthfully, I think the only way to play Merab, or the only way that Merab is going to beat Aldo is by grinding him out. Yeah. Outside of that last fight with Rob Font, which was a perfect matchup for Merab, he lacks a lot of the finishing ability I'd like to see, and I think Jose Aldo is durable enough that he'll have enough gas for 15 minutes, even if it's not going his way. All that being said, I think the finishing upside is on Jose Aldo. I could definitely see where this fight see a fight where Merab becomes very predictable with his takedown attempts, and we see a knee right up the middle like that Swanson fight. So I lean Aldo here, but I definitely lean him inside the distance, which is the only way I'm going to play it.
Yeah, the scorecard's no action. I really, really like that play a lot. I've got in on Aldo myself here. Merab, though, it's a style of fighting that's very easy to back. You know, it's a machine for a reason. The incredible gas tank he has, just that wrestling pressure. And while he might not be the best at holding you down, the guy can just chain attempt after attempt together for the full 15 minutes and much longer, it seems like, if needed. And, you know, the first two UFC fights, they did start off as losses, but, man, you know, it's like he's robbed and won. And, you know, the fight with Ricky Simone is just one of the weirdest circumstances ever. And if it went to decision instead of getting called at the end, Merab probably wins that, and he's 9-0 in the UFC here, you know. It got his first finish last time out, but tailor-made for a Merab finish there. And I still thought in that fight you got to see a ton of holes exploited from Marlon Moraes, and holes I think Aldo has potential to take advantage of too. Merab, so heavy in the wrestling stance because that's all he knows, and was continuing to get that lead leg just chewed up, and then he was closing the distance so sloppy with the spinning attacks, wild uppercuts. He was just constantly getting hit with the left hook over and over again. And what do you know, I think there's two things Aldo specializes in, and it's beating up your lead leg and throwing that counter left hook. Loves to work the body. You know, you talked about historically just being very difficult to take down, even harder to hold down for extended period of times, you know. So at plus money, plus 110, I thought the value was on him all day. 3-round fight, does not break as easy as people are going to think. And if Merab's takedowns get stuffed, I think he has a very, very hard time winning fights against the upper echelon of this division. I think Jose Aldo is the side here.
For my fight of the night, I have chose Alexander Romanov and Marcin Tybura. This had to be my fight of the night, man. Yeah. King Kong Romanov, easily the scariest prospect in the heavyweight division, and he's finally getting a legitimate test here against UFC veteran Marcin Tybura. Romanov has made waves since entering the UFC. Freestyle Moldovan wrestler, has this mauling style of fighting that's absolutely terrifying to watch when you see the sheer size of men he's able to do it to. The same way that you're kind of disgusted when you see Francis Ngannou punch another man in the face is the same type of reaction I get when I see Romanov suplex 100 or 280-pound men. As dominating as Romanov has been to this point, he hasn't really been tested or pushed to his limits outside of his controversial win over Juan Espino. One thing I took away from that fight, outside of whatever result you might think should have happened, is that Romanov has a little quit in him, man. And I do think that Tybura could be the guy to push him to that point where he has to decide whether or not he's got that dog in him again. Tybura has had a spotty 9-6 UFC record, but I do think it's important to note that he was fast-tracked into the upper echelon in the division. By his fourth fight, he was co-main against mainstay Andrei Arlovsky. Next fight, he was in the main event against former champion Fabricio Verdum. And it's pretty much killers from that point on when you're in the UFC. Now he's 4-1 in his last 5, and he's coming off a loss to Alexander Volkov. I think that this is a great buy low spot for Tybura. This would ultimately be the biggest test for Romanov will ever have fought in his career, in one of the highest variance divisions, and you're able to get 3-1 dog odds on the more proven, more experienced, bigger guy. And yes, I did say bigger guy. Tybura is going to be an inch taller, and judging by both guys' last weigh-in results, he'll have a 15-pound advantage in weight as well. The under is set at 1.5, and you can get plus 160 on the under 1.5, which is personally how I see Romanov getting the overwhelming majority of his wins. Outside of that first 1.5 rounds, I think it's bad news for big old Romanov. His style is very draining, and it takes an insane amount of energy to implement. If he can get the job done early, I see Tybura taking over late and either winning 2 rounds or getting that finish late. For this fight, I've placed a unit on Tybura money line at plus 350-ish, and I hedged, quote unquote, some with the under 1.5 in case Romanov comes in here and mauls Tybura early.
Yeah, well, I like both of those plays, and your boys hopped on Tybura as well, as I think everybody in this world should, to be honest with you. I go back and I try to find a fight where Tybura was up against like a real dominating wrestler, and there's not a lot of tape out there, but Romanov, like you said, pretty unique skill set, trying to drag guys down to the mat, suplexing them. But there is a Sergey Spivak fight out there. Sergey Spivak's a Sambo champion. He looks to always drag his fights down to the mat, and Tybura absolutely outclassed this guy in the grappling. Landed a nice little double leg in round 1 and 2. Reversed a sloppy takedown attempt in round 2, and took the back of Sergey Spivak for the rest of the time. And I don't think Tybura's lost at all on the mat here, and the later this fight goes, he's going to give Romanov a run for his money 100%. He's more experienced in general, far at the higher level, and if this fight is on the feet for any period of time, he's twice the striker of Romanov. Mm-hmm. Romanov, the dude is just so reliant on the offensive wrestling that, if he's not having success, the wheels fall off, man, and his only path to victory. It's so much energy, so much cardio on every takedown attempt. You saw in the Juan Espino fight, man, he can just as easily get taken down, and he has nothing off his back. His jiu-jitsu from top controls a forearm across the throat. Everything's just power, and eventually it's going to go, man. And, come round 2, over that 1.5 mark that you're talking about, you do not want a minus 400, minus 500 ticket in your hands whatsoever. It's wide heavyweight lines are like wide women's MMA lines. I missed it on fucking Angela Hill last week, and I'm going to hit it this week on Tybura, and I got some action on him as well. For my fight of the night, I'm going to go with Jared Gordon taking on Leonardo Santos. For Santos, man, it's just always, been a case of what if. The guy's now 42 years old, but at one time he was out there beating Thiago Santos, finished Anthony Rocco Martin, Kevin Lee. And then, came the injuries and all the setbacks, and he's fighting like once a year now. Again, 42 years old. He's been finished in back-to-back fights. The cardio is just taking a nosedive after round 1, and now you add that to the elevation of Salt Lake City, and I think he's truly going to have about, 4 or 5 minutes of gas in him here. But the first 4 or 5 minutes, man, the guy is extremely dangerous, and I think he has a possibility of finishing Gordon. He's got a big size advantage, and I think he's going to be able to snipe Gordon at range. Knockout over Kevin Lee and stuff, man, the guy does have power. And, Gordon being a wrestler is going to shoot at some point, offering Leo the chance to, snatch up his neck and submission win as well. But the longer it goes, that is where you start to, favor Jared Gordon and think he's going to take over this fight. I would say he's the superior wrestler of the two, far superior gas tank. But Jared north of minus 300 here, being more of a decision fighter, I'm not interested in laying that price tag on him, even with the red flags of Leonardo Santos. When I look at the betting line, I think it's just more or less has to do with Leo Santos' last performance over Clay Guida and gassing so bad, and not ever so much as what Jared Gordon has proven so far. And there's plenty of refs that stopped that Clay Guida fight as well, and I don't think Leo is a plus 250 if he finishes Clay Guida in round 1. Nowhere near plus 250 coming into this fight. So, I think the pick is going to be Jared Gordon. He's far less red flags, but I can't say that with a ton of confidence, to be honest with you. I think, like I said, got plus money on it. I'm going to look at playing doesn't go the distance here instead of a money line.
Yeah, when either one of these guys lose, they lose bad. Yeah. So I definitely like the look of doesn't go the distance. I'm with you on that. For my fighter to watch, I have selected Tyson Pedro. It is obvious the UFC is trying to get this guy back on track after his 3-year layoff. They've lined him up with yet another gimme fight against Harry Hunsucker, and he's coming in as the minus 800 favorite. While I do think that this is a favorable matchup for the 30-year-old prospect Pedro, I'm not thoroughly impressed with his skill set that we've seen up until this point, and I do think that he's a defensive liability. Hunsucker, he's coming down a weight class for this fight, but I do think it's important to note that he'll be on the bigger side of 205 pounds, and from what I've seen out of the 7-5 record he has up until this point is that he is dangerous for that first 5 minutes. This is a fight game, and as long as there are two grown men that are willing to throw down, anything could happen, and that holds especially true in these higher weight classes with lower level competition. Pedro has all the pressure on him for this fight that is almost like a neutral loss type situation where if he gets the first round KO, it's like, duh, you should have. It's Harry Hunsucker. But if any other outcome happens, it's a bad look because if he doesn't starch him or even worse, he gets upset, it's not good news for Tyson Pedro, which is why he is my fighter to watch right here.
He's got all the pressure in the world on him, man. Minus 200 for like first round finish or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fighter for me, gonna go with AJ Fletcher. I took the dog shot on AJ Fletcher last time at like plus 200 against Matthew Samuelsberger. Middle of round 2, this guy's like minus 250 live and comes away losing that fight. He was putting Samelsberger through the ringer early, though. Easy takedowns, multiple submission attempts, but the gas tank started to let him down. He's very explosive and athletic, strong wrestler and active on top. And he has a style that Angelusa really doesn't have a lot of experience against. But that style, it's very energy depleting, and his main path to victory being wrestling. I don't know if that was a cardio dump, an adrenaline dump in your UFC debut, or if he just doesn't have the gas tank to really support that path to victory. He's also going to be at a 7-inch reach disadvantage to Angelusa. Not going to be Angelusa stuck behind the jab of Lazez and Madalena this time. So, it is a bit of a... I'm just kind of curious as to how AJ Fletcher's going to approach this fight. I would definitely like to back him, but getting plus 200 the first time, minus 165 this time, for me, I can't get to the window. But I'm extremely excited to see the improvements that this guy continues to make from fight to fight.
For my underdog of the card, I'll be taking Marcin Tybura. He's a huge plus 300 or more dog, and I really do think that this is a fight that's a coin flip. Right. How this outcome's gonna happen. I think Tybura, as I mentioned before, that spotty 9-6 UFC record, but he was thrown into the wolves right off the bat, and he has definitely had a resurgence in his career since he entered the UFC. I do think that this is a buy low spot where we've got a proven UFC veteran in Marcin Tybura coming off of a loss against somebody who I actually hold in high regards in Alexander Volkov. And this is a huge step up for Romanov, the biggest step up in his career. And this is just a great opportunity to get somebody who's kind of being disrespected for a great price in Marcin Tybura.
Yeah, I am 100% with you. Sometimes you're just like, the line's wide, but no, I can legitimately make a case for this plus 300 here. For myself, I'm going to go Jose Aldo. I got him at plus 110, 1.5 units on him. The concern is that he breaks under the pressure of Merab, but like we talked about, it's only been Holloway and Yan late in championship rounds that have done that, and I'm not convinced over a 3-rounder here that Merab's going to have success to do so. The guys that you see Merab beat, Cody Stamann, Brad Katona, Casey Kinney, all these guys are guys that are willing to grapple and exchange in that with Merab because that's their offense as well in a whole lot of their fights. And, I just don't think that's going to be the case with Jose Aldo. We saw when Merab kind of gets a legit contender, gets a talented striker, he's seconds away from losing that fight. And if it wasn't Marlon Moraes, someone who was, washed up with the foot out the door, I think you're actually going to go on and see Merab lose that fight a lot of the time. And great gas tank, takedown defense. Man, if you want to ask me where the value is, it's on Jose Aldo. I love that decision, scorecards, no action. Bet on Jose Aldo. I think he has very potential to come through as a live underdog Saturday.
For my prop of the night, I have chosen Jose Aldo scorecards, no action. I think the majority of Merab Dvalishvili's win conditions is grinding him out against the cage and just continuing that takedown. I do think that Jose Aldo is durable enough to withstand 15 minutes against anybody in the world. And I don't think that Dvalishvili has the finishing upside or has shown me that he has any type of finishing upside that would make me think differently that he could finish Aldo here. So I do think that Aldo has some paths to victory, but I am pretty confident that if this does finish inside the distance, that Aldo's going to be the one who's getting his hand raised.
I personally think that is one of the best plays that you can make on this card, man. So excellent prop. Going to be adding and doubling down on Aldo in that way. Prop for me, going to take Gordon versus Santos, doesn't go the distance, plus 120. I did take doesn't go the distance because he got finished with 2 seconds left against, what's the other dude's name? Grant Dawson, another wrestler just like Jared Gordon. So, and still get plus money, you're absolutely gonna take doesn't go the distance instead of that under 2.5. Reasons I like it here, I told you the Santos finishing upside is very high early in this fight. In the same style of fighter, Clay Guida, Grant Dawson, wrestlers with a good gas tank, is the ones that are going to break Leo Santos as well. His cardio's down the drain. You add the elevation. The best version of Leo Santos was 6-7 years ago, and it's only been downhill since then, in my opinion. But again, I think he can finish Jared Gordon in the first round a lot. The size, the reach, the submission, and Jared has been finished inside the distance in all 5 of his losses. So high-paced fight, finishing upside for both guys, in my opinion. And you said when these guys lose, they do lose bad. And to get plus money on it doesn't go the distance, I'm liking that bet.
For my best bet, I'm not the most confident that I should be, but it is going to be my best bet for this fight card. It is AJ Fletcher's money line. I think that he's got a great opponent. He's a workhorse, a wrestler. He's going to put Angelusa through the ringer. He's going to continue with the takedowns, make Angelusa use up all the muscles that he has. I know that Lusa has a 7-inch reach advantage, but I think AJ Fletcher is the type of guy to just close that distance, take a few shots to get his offense going, and he's just not going to stop once he gets that offense going. Right now, you're getting him at minus 160, and I do think that you're still good. I kind of capped him as a minus 200, so that's where I would not lay any money on him, but I do think that he has a pretty significant edge over Angelusa here. It's low level, so I'm not saying bet your bankroll on it, but I do think that he has all the advantages that would make me want to bet him, which is why he's my best bet.
Yeah, I like AJ Fletcher as well. A guy was very easily to get behind last time as well. Best bet for me, laying some chalk here, man. Minus 350. I think Amir Albazi has a very easy fight in front of him, a very stylistically favorable fight in front of him. It was like my confidence on Mark DeCasey a couple weeks ago. Not getting cute with the parlays, just going to hit this one straight, man. I got 5 units on Amir Albazi to win just under 1.5 units, and it seems like that line is just continuing to go up. I think this guy is legitimately a top 15 talent in the flyweight division. I really do, and I think he's going to be around for a long time, and I cannot say the same thing for, little Figueiredo here. And then, like I said, stylistically, I think it favors him a ton. The guy strikes when he needs to strike, closes the distance, and sets up his entries. He's got really good timing on his takedowns. I think his gas tank is much better than Figueiredo, and once he gets on top, man, he is active at hunting for those submissions. And, you see the fight with Zalga Zumagulov. That is like a John Dodson guy to hold down. He's very wily, weaselly on the feet, and he was just able to consistently take him down. And when you see Malcolm Gordon grind out Figueiredo the way he did, just holding him against the mat, and then you watched Albazi just completely steamroll, drop him, submit Malcolm Gordon. I think Albazi has all the tools in the world to win this fight, and at an 80% clip, I was comfortable to just lay the hammer here on him at minus 350.
Moving on to our quick pick section of the podcast, we start off the night in the flyweight division with Victor Altamirano versus Daniel Da Silva. I'm going to end up going with Victor Altamirano to win here. I don't think that this fight's going to the scorecards, whatever's going to happen, but I do think that Victor is the more talented of the two.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to be on the same side, and I know we're contemplating if we want to lay the juice on a flyweight under, but Daniel Da Silva, man, never been the distance, killed or be killed, and you're stepping in here on short notice, so I think it's going to hit. Next fight up, 135, Arichi Lane taking on Jay Perrin. I really haven't done my due diligence on this fight, man, to pick a good side. I think another under has potential to hit in this fight as well. You saw Jay Perrin kind of outperform his expectations against Mario Bautista last time, but I think I'm going to be on the Arichi Lane side.
First disagreement of the night, I'm going to be taking Jay Perrin here. I've been looking at him as a dog all week, but like you said, a little more due diligence, a little more looking into it before I lay the price tag or lay the units on him. But I do kind of lead Perrin here. Nice. For the third fight of the night, we go to back to the flyweight division with Amir Albazi versus Francisco Figueiredo. I'm with you. I think Albazi has all the tools to get this done rather easy, so I'll be taking him.
Moving on, man. Up to 170, AJ Fletcher taking on Angelusa. Your best bet in the next fight here. I'm going to side with you, man, AJ Fletcher. But I think it's going to be by decision here.
Yeah, I think that Fletcher's going to break Angelusa. I don't have much faith in Angelusa. Although Lusa hasn't been finished yet, I don't have much faith in him having to work for 3 whole rounds. I think that he'll fold under Fletcher's pressure. Moving on to back to the flyweight division again, we have Miranda Maverick versus Shanna Young. We were wanting to play Shanna Young just because the price is so ridiculous, and we've seen how many times have we seen low-level MMA where the the Underdogs just wrongly priced at the end of the day. I'm going to go with Miranda Maverick here. She's beat her once before, but I do not like the price.
Yeah, it is a tall price to pay. Seeing how quickly she finished the fight once she kind of got her hands on her, I think Maverick's got her covered everywhere. Sean Woodson versus Luis Saldana here at featherweight. A fight that I haven't really looked into much because I'm not laying that juice on Sean Woodson, man. I think this is just kind of going to be a striker's battle, and I think it's going to be a close fight. I am going to side with Sean Woodson. I don't really like the gas tank I see from Luis Saldana.
Yeah, I feel like Woodson's biggest problem is pillow hands, but I do think that he's the side here. I'll pick him to win as well. Moving on, we have Lucy Pudilova versus Yanan Wu, people's main event. I'll be taking Yanan Wu here to win.
So I hope all that shit I'm seeing on Twitter is not true, and this is not put on the pay-per-view, man, at all. Man, Pudilova, she's a favorite, isn't she?
I think so.
She washed out of the UFC once before. Give me another dog and Wu Yanan. Jared Gordon versus Leo Santos. I'm on the under here at plus money or doesn't go the distance. I'm going to side with the favorite, less red flags, but not playing Jared Gordon's money line.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I'll also be taking Gordon here. Moving on, Tyson Pedro versus Harry Hunsucker.
Tell him what prop you like.
I really like the plus 4,000 Harry Hunsucker round 1 submission. I actually like that prop, but I do think that Tyson Pedro is getting set up here by the UFC, and he should get the dub.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. Tyson Pedro probably finishes this in the first round. Marcin Tybura versus Alexander Romanov. You know, like I told you, there's some times where you just bet it because the line's wide, but I can make a case for Tybura, man, and he's going to be the pick. I like Marcin Tybura. Finish probably in the later half of this fight.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Tybura is the pick for us. Moving on, we go to the bantamweight division with Jose Aldo versus Merab Dvalishvilli. We're both on Aldo. I think I'm going to go with him to actually win.
Yeah, I'm on Aldo as well. I really do think he has all the tools to win this fight. Co-main event, Paulo Costa taking on Luke Rockhold. You know, this isn't a 2017 Luke Rockhold anymore. You know, I got to be realistic about what I think is going to happen here, and I don't think he has the chin to withstand 15 minutes. So I'm going to go with the Costa knockout, round 1 or 2 probably.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. Costa by knockout.
Although that Rockhold submission.
The Rockhold submission plus 1,000.
Nice.
I think that's a really nice angle for this fight, and probably Rockhold's most likely win condition.
Right.
In the main event, Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. We're going with another dog shot. I do think that Leon Edwards is going to make this fight close, and we got 5 rounds to work. If Kamaru can't get that wrestling going, I think we're in for a dog fight.
Yeah, I think the value is on Leon Edwards 100%. I will be shocked if Kamaru Usman covers this price tag. I really, really will. So dog shot all day on Leon Edwards, man, to be the new welterweight champion come Saturday. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We got 13 fights on tap. Next pay-per-view on Saturday in Salt Lake City. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.
Peace.